All right, guys. So for today, we're going to do just the first half of section 6.5. This is the last section of chapter 6. This is also the last section we will cover before Christmas break. I know, right? You're like, wait a minute. We're going to do first part today. We'll finish it on Monday. Then we're going to do, we have some review in there. We're going to have our test over chapter 6. And then we are actually going to do our exams before Christmas break. I know, I'm a rebel. I'm not following the rules. I'm doing mine before. That way, over Christmas break, you have nothing to worry and stress about because it's already done. You don't have to worry about forgetting everything. And then we'll just do one last chapter when we come back. Okay? Well, no, we'll do a chapter when we come back. That'll finish out the semester. Okay? But we're not what? That will not be on your exam, no. I went ahead and pulled that part off of the exam, and we'll just do a test on it at the end. Okay, Lydia? Say that again. Like air testing and all of that. I think sophomores are starting to test next week, and then the email we got today said after Christmas break, anybody who needs to retake them for more points will be, I think it's after break. So then you won't have to worry about the exam either at that time. Okay, sound good? You guys okay? All right, so this last section is actually solving. So up to this point, we've just simplified as far as we can. But from now on, in this section, we are actually going to solve. So we are going to work on radical equations today. We'll work on the rational exponent part on Monday. So we'll split it into two parts. So an equation with a variable inside a radical is called a blank equation. Any guess? A cool? Kind of. If somebody's radical, are they cool? Yeah, it's just a radical equation. It's totally radical, dude, right? Surfer talk. If the index is 2, the equation is called a... Well, if the index is 2, what is that? What did you say? It's just a square root equation. You were trying to sound extra smart. I appreciate the effort. So for example, we got one down there. We have the square root of 3x minus 2 equals 4. So we're going to be working on solving things that have a variable underneath our radicals. Okay? All right. So how to solve a radical equation. So you're kind of step by step here. Blank the radical on one side of the equation. Move. I like move. I was going to use the word isolate. Sounds fancier. You can write move. I don't care. I wrote isolate, though, because you want just the radical on one side. Anything that's not under that radical, you want to move to the other side. All right, so you're getting it by itself. To eliminate the radical, do its... How do you solve equations? You always do the opposite. Yeah, you're still doing its opposite. So what it is you are going to raise each side of the equation to an exponent that is equal to the index of the radical. So if it's a square root equation, it's like a square root symbol. What's the index on a square root? 2. How do you undo a square root? You square it. Yeah, how do you undo a cubed root? You cube it. How do you undo a fourth root? I knew you guys would say you fourth it. You raise it to the 4th power. All right. At that step, your radical should be gone. Okay, then you will go ahead and solve for x, whatever that means. Sometimes you have to factor, right, if there's an x squared. Solve for x, and then you must check your answer, okay, by substituting it into the original equation. And make sure you go back to the original. Now, the big deal with checking, and I'll be honest, there's really only, you have to check, so have to check when there is a variable on both sides of the equation. Because what happens is you get some of those extraneous solutions, answers that show up, but when you plug them back in, you're like, yeah, it really didn't actually work. Okay, so you have to make sure you're checking when you have variables on both sides. Now, you don't technically have to if there's just the 1x, but can you check and make sure your answer is right? Yeah, and I probably would. Okay. So number 1, solve each radical equation. So the square root of 3x minus 2 equals 4. Is the radical by itself? Yep. Okay, right now the index is a 2, so the opposite of a square root is to square it. If I square one side, I have to square the other side, right? We got to be fair, got to keep it balanced. So what does the square and the radical do to each other? They cancel out. So all I have left over here then is 3x minus 2, right? Because those canceled out. And then 4 squared is 16. And then solve for x. All right, so we'll add 2. So 3x equals 18. And x equals 6. Yeah, it's not terrible. Today really isn't too bad of a day. Now, the directions were to, let's go ahead and practice checking this just so we can kind of get used to it now before you have to. You always go back to the original. So if you go back to that original, this is where grab your calculator. It's usually a lot easier, especially if basic math is not your strong suit. And you know who you are. Go ahead and type in the radical. So it's just a square root. And then underneath, you would type in 3 times 6 minus 2, all underneath your radical. Hit equals and see if it's 4. What are you doing? Good? Yay! All right, so that's how you check. You're going ahead and take your answer, you plug it in, you can type the whole thing right in underneath the radical, see what you get, see if it's what it says it should equal. Okay? All right, number 2, is the radical by itself? No. So we need to subtract the 3. You got to get it by itself. Can I add and subtract into a radical? No, it's kind of like jail, right? You can't actually break into that. So we get the square root of 5x minus 6 equals 4. Once the radical is isolated, how do you undo a square root? You square it. If I do it to one side, you have to do it to the other. So then it's just 5x minus 6 equals 16. And then solve for x. So we'll add 6, which is 22. Divide by 5. And it's just 22 over 5. Everybody panicked, right? Because it didn't divide. And they're like, oh my God, I did something wrong. It didn't work. It's a fraction. Yeah, leave it as a fraction. Leave it as a fraction. So again, to check, come back to the original problem. So in your calculator, you would type in 3 plus, then do your radical. And in place of the x, you would put in 22 over 5. And see, when you do all of that and hit equals, do you actually get 7? I don't know, so try it. Any questions on checking or anything like that so far? Make sure we can check the easier ones so when we get to the harder ones later, it'll be better for you. Okay. Number 3 on your own. 4. All right, so for number 3, we had to subtract the 3 first. So we had the square root of 3x minus 5 equals 5. To undo a square root, we square it. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. So we get 3x minus 5 equals 25. Add 5, so 3x equals 30. So x equals 10. Did we check it and did it work? Good? All right. So take a look at 4, because I heard some of you asking some questions here. I have a 3 in front and a 6 that's not under that radical. What do you get rid of first? The 6. Think about if that was just a regular equation and I gave you 3x plus 6 equals 24, what would you get rid of? You would do the 6 first. So same idea here. This is like one big giant variable I can't really break apart. So I want to subtract the 6 first. right, how do I get rid of that 3? You would divide. Yep. That's being multiplied by that radical. All right, so we get all the way down to the square root of 2x plus 4 equals 6. Okay, so get rid of anything added and subtracted, not under my radical first. Then go ahead and divide that 3 out of there. To undo a square root, we will square both sides. So 2x plus 4 equals 36. Solve for x. 2x equals 32. X equals 16. Now, let's talk about actually checking this, because I heard some conversations going on that last problem about this. So when you're typing this in your calculator, you still want to kind of just start back at the original. So 3, then do your square root, 2 times 16 plus 4. Where is this plus 6? It's outside. So as you're typing, you're going to have to arrow to the right to move your cursor outside of that, and then do the plus 6. If it's underneath there, it's going to change your answer. Okay, so go ahead, take a minute, try typing that in, make sure we're okay on how to type it in to check it. Okay, number 5, the cubed root of 5x plus 2 equals negative 2. How do you undo a cubed root? You cube it. Yeah, so whatever that index number is, that's the exponent that you will raise it to. So the cubed root and cubing it will cancel that out, so it's just 5x plus 2. Negative 2 cubed is negative 8, good. And solve. Right, so 5x equals negative 10. So x equals negative 2. How do you check that one? Go back to the beginning. Where you see the x, you're plugging in a negative 2. How do you get the cubed root? Math 4. Good. Math 4 will pull that up. And make sure it works. Did you check it? Look on your face says, nope, I sure didn't. So is there any reason to get these wrong? Not really. You can check every one. Yeah, today's not bad. The radical equations are not that bad. Yeah, Monday the exponents will be fractions. They're still not terrible. All right, so number 6. What do I do first? Good, minus that 2. So the cubed root of 9x plus 1 equals 4. Once your radical is by itself, what am I going to do? Good. Cube both of these. The cube and the cubed root will cancel. And I just have 9x plus 1. What's 4 cubed? 64. All right, and then solve for x. So 9x equals 63. So x equals 7. Are we liking this section so far? You like how I said so far? I'm kidding. They do get a little harder, but they're not bad. I'm going to bypass 7. You guys okay with that? Let's look at 8. Sorry, overachievers, I skipped 7. I moved on to 8. All right, you with me? You good? All right. Why is this one different? It's not simplest form. It's not in the correct order, you're right. But at this point, I'm not really worried too much about that. I need to get rid of this radical. How do I get rid of this radical? 4th root it? It's already 4th rooted. To the 4th power, that is, 4th power. Means very different things, very different. All right, so that's going to give me 7 minus 3x equals 2 to the 4th? 16. Solving, I get negative 3x equals 9. So x equals negative 3. Do we know how to check that one? How do you get the fourth root on your calculator? You have to hit 4 and then math 5. Math 5? Where are you confused at, hon? Okay. Well, that was easy. So whatever the index number is, that's the exponent you raise it to. Okay. So you want to see how this actually does get harder? No. No? Before that, do number 9 on your own. All right. So we had to subtract the 8 first. So we have the fourth root of 2x minus 7 equals 1. To undo the fourth root, we will raise it to the fourth power. So 2x minus 7, what's 1 to the fourth? I seriously can't even tell you how many times people tell me that's 4. It's always the basic stuff, right? Like, what's 1 times 5? They're like, 1? No, it's 5. 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is not 4. It's 1. All right, so then we have to add 7. So 2x equals 8. So x equals 4. All right. You ready to make it just a little harder? Just a little. We will in a minute. Just a little. Just a little harder. Uh-oh. What happened? There's another x. So if I have an x on both sides, what must I do? You got to check your answer. You have to check them. Okay? Have to check them. All right, so here we go. So it's just a square root, so I will square both sides. So 3x minus 2 equals x squared. Savannah? Yes. Remember, anytime we have an x squared, we have to set it equal to 0 so we can factor it. So we will subtract the 3x over, add the 2 on the other side. You can, but I don't know why you would. I mean, you can use the quadratic formula. That'll work, but I think it's faster to factor. Yeah, if you're good at factoring, it's a lot faster. How does this factor? Parentheses? Good. X minus 2 and x minus 1. Remember, the last one's positive, so my signs are the same. Right? We took a little break away from this, right? Options for 2 is 1 and 2, and those together are going to make minus 3 I need. Okay? So then what does x equal? 2 and 1? You need to check this. Nope. Checking them will let you know if it works or doesn't work. So go ahead and take a minute, grab your calculator, or do it in your head, whatever you're comfortable with. Put those in, let's see if it works. So if I'm plugging a 2 in here, what should it equal? 2. X can't equal 2 different things in the same problem. Like I can't have it be a 2 here and a 1 on this side. So if I plug in a 2, this side should equal 2. If I plug in a 1, this side should be 1. Okay, so you always want to make sure you are checking those. We will see some where they have answers that don't actually work. Yeah, right? Good? All right, so that one wasn't terrible. No, we're going to talk about this one. Savannah? Good. We need to add 3. Right? You got to get that part by itself. So we'll add 3. So the square root of 11x plus 3. What's x plus 3? Thank you. Don't say 3x. If you write 3x, you just multiplied. That's x plus 3. That's where everybody messes these up. Well, hold on. Let's talk. So I know I need to square both sides, right? So this will just give me 11x plus 3. What's it mean when you have a whole quantity squared?
It's the same thing.
That means I have 2 of them. So what do I have to do with that? Watch your mouth. I distribute this. Jeez. Yeah, so guys, that is honestly where most people will struggle with these. They'll just write x squared plus 9. I'm like, yeah, you can't just square both of them. It means I have 2 of these, and then we have to distribute them. So we get x squared plus 6x plus 9. All right, everybody kind of tuck that away into your mental bank right there, right? If I see a quantity squared, it means I have 2 of them. You have to distribute. All right, now from here, Savannah? Yep, these both got to move over here. I have an x squared. I got to set it equal to 0 so I can factor. So we have x squared. Subtract the 11. Gives me negative 5x. Subtract the 3. Gives me a 6. Okay, I've just moved everything to the other side so I can set it equal to 0. Did I lose you? I didn't show my work. I'm sorry. All right, from there we have to factor. Remember the dreaded 6-5 combo I've mentioned? There it is. What are your signs? They are both negative. So my last one's positive, so they're the same. So is it 1 and 6 or is it 2 and 3? It's 2 and 3. So then x equals 2 and 3. Again, we have to check and make sure these things work. Back to the original. Plug in a 2, and that should equal 2 on that side. Or if you plug in a 3, it should be a 3 on this side. And double check them, guys. Do they actually work? Both of those work. That's about the hardest one you're going to get, where you actually have to distribute. Okay. Other than that, they're not terrible. Ooh. We're going to save that part. We're not going to do that today.